Mr. Parashit.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to begin by asking you, India-China relations today are at a turning point. What do you feel about the reset that is underway in ties, and what will be the impact on the future of the partnership going forward?
Well, first I may say that you are using the right word, that the partnership. It's exactly the basic orientation of our bilateral relations. Well, China's basic judgment on China-India relations remains unchanged. China and India are partners rather than rivals to each other, and opportunities rather than threats. It's an important consensus reached by the leaders of our two countries and should be earnestly implemented. And it would be a miscalculation to treat a close neighbor for thousands of years as enemy or threat only by one issue or one incident. We should respect and support each other, avoid suspicion and misunderstanding, and enhance political mutual trust. Another important consensus agreed by our two leaders is to properly handle differences and not allow them to become disputes. We should put the boundary question at an appropriate place in our bilateral relations and not allow differences to disturb the relationship. Any action that enlarges and complicates the contradiction will not help solve the problem. In fact, dialogue and negotiation is the only right way out.
Right.
The basic fact of China and India are the two largest neighboring developing countries remain unchanged. And the orientation of China and India are partners remains unchanged. And the general landscape that China and India are interdependent for common development remains unchanged. Due to these three unchanged, I don't think there is a reset in China-India relations. Our relationship should move forward rather than backward or reverse. And China and India should avoid mutual attrition nor be opposed to each other. And instead, we should meet halfway to bring our bilateral relationship back on the right track at an early time.
Right. Since the 15 June clash, India and China have been talking at a military and diplomatic level to resolve tensions. According to Indian officials, disengagement has been stalled due to Chinese troop deployment at Pangong So and Gogra Post, among other areas. Indian officials feel that disengagement may stretch to the winter season and beyond. Will Chinese troops restore the status quo as existed before the 5th of May 2020, Ambassador Sun?
When we're talking about the Galavan Valley incident, that is an unfortunate one, and its merit is very clear. The bilateral channels of communications between China and India are open and smooth after the incident. The dialogue and the negotiations have been undergoing all the time. The Chinese State Council and Foreign Minister, Mr. Wang Yi, had telephone conversations with External Affairs Minister, Dr. Jaishankar, and National Security Advisor and India's Special Representative, Mr. Doval, respectively. We have held 5 rounds of Corps commanders meetings and 4 rounds of meetings of working mechanism for consultation and coordination of China-India border affairs, which is WMCC. And the troops on the ground have maintained communication. We had met almost every week on average since June the 15th. And both sides take it very seriously to address the issue. I think we have an important consensus, that is to push forward disengagement and de-escalation through dialogue and negotiations, and maintain peace and tranquility in the border areas. The existing situation on the ground is under control on the whole, and there is no fresh standoff between the two forces. Of course, negotiations are in process that takes time, and we should keep the momentum of dialogue and negotiation, further de-escalate the border situation, properly handle the remaining issues, and jointly maintain peace and tranquility along the border areas. Here I must say that China always stands for peaceful settlement of boundary disputes through dialogues and negotiation. And meanwhile, it's the legitimate right of every country to safeguard its own sovereignty and territorial integrity. So it is not the same thing as expansionism. China should not be labeled as expansionist. Both China and India are victims of imperialism and colonialism. So we should work together to oppose hegemonism, power politics, and expansionism. Thank you.
You know, the next question, can India and China work on an early resolution of the boundary question? This has been now debated for several years now. Several rounds of boundary talks have taken place. Do you think it would be possible for the two sides to carry out delineation, demarcation and delimitation of the boundary once and for all? Is China considering any such move?
Well, an early resolution of boundary question is the sooner the better. However, the boundary question is left over from history, which is very complicated and sensitive. It needs patience to resolve. And we should seek a fair, reasonable, and mutually acceptable solution through equal consultation and peaceful negotiation. Since the mechanism of special representatives on the boundary question was established in 2003, we have worked out a three-step roadmap that is initially defining political parameters and guiding principles, then followed by the second step, which is negotiating a framework agreement, and then finally completing border demarcation. And in 2005, the first step was accomplished when both sides agreed to make meaningful and mutually acceptable adjustments so as to arrive at a package settlement to the boundary question. And during the informal summit last year in Chennai, our two leaders welcomed the work of the special representatives and urged them to continue their efforts to arrive at a mutually agreed framework. So China has a sincere political will to resolve the boundary question. We have been committed to actively advancing border talks and formulating roadmap for framework discussions and pushing forward consultations on early harvest. So we hope the Indian side could equally show political will and move forward towards the settlement of the boundary question.
Has there been any contact between Prime Minister Modi and President Xi since the border clash? Is a phone conversation or meeting likely in the coming months, Ambassador Sun? Could there be a Mahabalipuram or Wuhan type of summit to guide relations after these recent clashes?
Well, the leaders of our two countries play an essential and irreplaceable role in guiding our relationship. So in the recent years, President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Narendra Modi have met many times, which showcase the significance they attach to our bilateral relations. And in particular, during the two informal summits in Wuhan and Chennai, our two leaders held in-depth and candid communication on overarching long-term and strategic issues of global and regional importance, which provided the fundamental guidance and direction for the development of bilateral ties. The current difficulties we are facing in our bilateral relations have even highlighted the importance of transmitting and implementing the leaders' consensus. We cannot get cold feet or even backpedaling in face of temporary difficulties. More efforts need to be taken at working level to transmit and implement the leaders' consensus and translate it into action in order to bring our ties back on track.
just to speak about our economic cooperation as well, on the issue of 5G trials, it seems that India has taken a decision on holding 5G trials without Chinese companies. What would be your reaction to that?
Well, what I learned is that last year, the Department of Telecommunications, the DOT of India, invited enterprises from various countries, including Huawei, to participate in the 5G trials. So I wonder if you have an official confirmation of what you said. But as a private enterprise, Huawei has achieved a leading position in 5G technology. But however, a certain country resorts to suppress a Chinese private company. It attempts to hinder normal market cooperation and scientific and technological development under the pretext of national security, even without any factual basis or concrete evidence. Such kind of hegemonic actions violate the rules of the market and the principle of fair competition, and it will eventually damage its own interest and credibility. Let me say that Huawei has been operating in India for 20 years. It has created a large number of local jobs, promoted sufficient competition in India's telecommunications market, and provided high quality and low-cost products and services to Indian telecom operators and consumers. So Huawei has never had any security issue in its operations in India. Furthermore, Huawei is ready to enter into a no backdoor agreement with India. So we hope India can make an independent, fair, and right judgment in this regard, and provide an open, fair, transparent, and non-discriminatory business environment for Chinese enterprises to invest and operate in India.
I think time and again, the Indian government has been saying that there cannot be business as usual with China till the time the LAC standoff is resolved. The Indian government recently banned 50 Chinese applications and is considering stopping Chinese participation in several infrastructure projects as well. There are plans to reduce imports from China. What do you feel about this larger economic decoupling that is underway right now?
Well, we believe it's unreasonable to link boundary question with normal bilateral cooperation. I have noted there are emerging rational voices in India pointing out that such restrictive practices are both unrealistic and harmful to India's own interest and may eventually lead to a lose-lose situation. As we see it, China-India economic and trade cooperation is mutually beneficial with win-win results. China's investment in India has contributed to India's economic development and created a large number of local jobs. And in the era of globalization, countries in the world, including China and India, are interdependent and integrated with each other, forming a pattern where everyone has a stake. I think the two major economies of China and India should attract each other like magnets, rather than forcefully be separated or even decoupled from each other. Suppression, self-seclusion, and restrictions are not good for development. Only by being open, fair, and transparent can we better integrate into global cooperation. Well, though those discriminatory restrictions do hurt Chinese enterprises and companies, but the Indian consumers and employees suffer too. So it does no good to either of us. We hope that India will change its relevant practice and treat every enterprise and service provider from various countries equally, so as to create an open, fair, and equitable business environment for all.
Right. China's economy grew by 3.2% in the April-June quarter. This was largely driven by recovery from COVID-19 and investments in infrastructure. What does this mean for China and the world? And tell us about China's next steps in economic recovery at a time when the entire global demand scenario is depressed.
Well, you are right. China is the first major economy to return to growth since the pandemic. Our economy shows strong resilience and great potential. In July, industrial added value above designated size was up by 4.8% year-on-year, with positive growth for 4 consecutive months. And exports of goods rose by 10.4%. And online sales, education, and medical services have developed rapidly. For example, from January to July, the online retail sales increased by 15.7%. China's economy is like a strong engine, has made important contribution to the stability of global industrial supply chains, injecting confidence and momentum into the recovery of world economy. I noticed that the Ministry of Commerce and Industry of India recently released monthly trade data, which showed from this April to July, India's overall exports declined due to COVID-19. But however, India's exports to China increased by nearly 31%. The share of exports to China in its total exports climbed to 9.7%, which is almost doubled. This once again shows that an open and vigorous China means huge opportunities for India. In the face of current international situation, China will take advantage of its huge domestic market form a new development pattern centered on internal circulation and speed up a dual circulation growth model in which domestic and foreign market can boost each other. This new pattern is by no means a closed but an open circulation. We will create new growth momentum through scientific and technological innovation, spur new vitality by deepening reform, and foster new advantages of international cooperation and competition with high-level opening up. So China will more closely link with the world economy and attract more international commodities and resources. According to a report issued by the World Bank last month, China's business environment ranking leaped from the 78th in 2018 to the 31st in 2020. And the Ministry of Commerce of China recently conducted a survey which shows more than 99% of foreign enterprises will continue to operate in China. China will continue to promote and lead economic globalization, provide more market opportunities, investment opportunities, and growth opportunities to help the world economy step out of the recession at an early date and achieve a stable recovery.
Right. And, my final question now, U.S. has been targeting China repeatedly for aggression in the South China Sea and at the Indian border. How hopeful is China right now about reducing trade and strategic tensions with the United States?
Well, recently, some politicians in the United States have kept making groundless remarks against China and tried to misguide international public opinion and chosen unilaterally to be provocative. This is clear to the international community. But in response, the Chinese government has expanded its position comprehensively and reacted resolutely to firmly defend our sovereignty, security, and development interests, and safeguard and stabilize China-US relations. We are always ready to develop a China-US relationship featuring no conflict, no confrontation, mutual respect, and win-win cooperation based on coordination, cooperation, and stability. So we hope the US will meet China halfway and abandon its Cold War mentality and zero-sum game approach and bring China-US relations back to the track of sound and steady development. Mutually beneficial cooperation over the years have turned China and US into a community with shared interests. Over 70,000 American businesses have made investments in China with a total sales volume of $700 billion US. And among them, 97% are making a profit. Even with the trade friction and COVID-19, the vast majority of American companies in China still want to stay and doubling down on investment in China. We hope the United States can stop suppressing and bullying China's companies and return to the right track of openness and cooperation. And on the South China Sea, China never expanded sovereign claims and has been committed to negotiation and consultation to settle the territorial and maritime disputes with the neighboring countries based on international law and the respect for historical facts. Whether it's the South China Sea issue or the China-India boundary question, we have been committed to settling disputes through dialogue and keep the region peaceful and stable. So we don't accept countries outside the region pointing fingers and making instigation. Thank you.
All right, Ambassador Sun Weidong, thank you so much for speaking to CNBC-TV18. Thank you for taking our time for us.